See, Greg, it's a fancy open.
What's up?
You tell me. Are you globe-trotting or are you local?
I am home at the moment.
Okay. And so he's having which cup of coffee is this? You okay?
That went down the wrong pipe.
You okay, brother?
I'm all right, man. I got to take another drink. I feel like this thermos didn't work. I was expecting a hot drink and it was cold.
Uh-oh. You see, go for it. Take it. Yeah, clear it
There
out.
There we go. I had to
clear it out. Clear it out.
At least it didn't go at the camera.
Woo! Well, but see, now if that had been a spit take, then you and the boss, that would have been an interesting purchase. You're going over to Best Buy and you're checking in with a Geek Squad. Excuse me. So what happened? Why are you buying a new computer? Yeah, I had that kind of spit on
pretty much
lens.
Pretty much, man.
So how is the globetrotting going? And I know that since we're getting into the college season, high schools are kind of getting into practice as well. Where are things right now with you and Cap and Beyond Goals? What's going on?
Everything is good, man. All is well. Can't complain. Same old, getting involved with, I'm sure high school will probably start at the end of the year. So you have a few more months for that. Obviously college is all starting right now, which is always great, man.
When it comes to you looking at the college experience these days, you got to go through club and pursue it that way. College experience right now, it doesn't seem to matter what level. I mean, it could be Division I, Division II, 3, NAIA, whatever. It seems to me like the margins are closing. And so if you choose college as a path, that's cool. You know, it's not something where, you know, if you start in your Division I, that's great. If you start and it's a small college in, you know, Nebraska or Wyoming, it doesn't really matter. I think the margins are closing these days when it comes to where you can be the best you that you can be.
Most definitely. It's, you know, we want, even in our mentorship, we want kids to understand that they should take, I even tell my own kids, you want kids to take soccer as far as it takes them, right? There's so many values that they'll continue to learn. If you look at, you know, corporate hires or just major organizations and kids who, you know, don't have the opportunity to maybe live out their dream of being a professional soccer player, but they can still use an amazing education going to college and helping them learn values and things that will help them with everyday life. And, you know, the teamwork, how to deal with adversity, how to get through challenging moments, how to get through obstacles and hurdles. Those are all things learned within sport and what it provides for us. So college can provide so much in that realm as well.
Well, and at the same time, you mentioned dealing with adversity and all of these obstacles that you would tackle on a daily basis outside of the athletic field. I mean, it's something that even today, when you and Cap have, you know, when you guys decided to start Beyond Goals, I'm sure, and I'm fairly sure that there was a learning curve going in. There's a learning curve even now as you're going. And I think that in stages, there's been learning as you've gone. How much learning have you and Michael had when it comes to building Beyond Goals, hitting separate stages and going, okay, we need to do this. We need to add this. How much learning have you guys even done today?
We say it all the time, right? I think we speak about it all the time. We learn, there are so many things that we learn from kids. I was actually speaking to Mike Conti about this last night at the Atlanta Journal, Sports Business Journal panel that I was invited to last night, which I will say this, I was extremely disappointed. They mentioned every professional former athlete there and did not mention Atlanta United or me. So that was kind of upsetting. But other than that, you know, I mentioned that to Mike Conti last night of just there are so many cool things that we learn even as adults from these kids and the ways that they think and the way that they carry themselves and how we can continue to produce new ideas and build new platforms to help others, right? Because some kids already have it. Some kids already have certain qualities within their personality and the character that they are that allow them to be role models for others. And I love using examples of those elite personality kids to other kids who may be struggling in those areas.
But I would also imagine that there are elite athletes that young athletes look to that for one reason or another, you might have to steer them away from those certain athletes. You may sit there and think that, so-and-so might be a great mentor, but the more that you learn about these individuals, you might have to steer away from them. How many warning signs do you and Michael give about choosing your mentors wisely when you want to grow as a person?
Man, choosing mentors wisely is a big one we talk about a lot. We definitely want to bring a woman in the future. That is a huge talking point within Mike and myself. But there's so many values that they have to cover. They have to be willing to have a lot of similar thoughts that we have in regard to, most importantly, the comfort to work with kids. Not everybody likes working with kids. That's first and foremost. And there's just so many different values that we hold within, I think, ourselves that are massive. And we want them to obviously, take the reins and do with it what they want in regard to maybe personal storytelling. But there is a set curriculum and things that we really like to follow, and kind of creating those conversations. So it's a difficult process finding the right person for that job, and as we continue to grow. But I think one that we will hopefully get to some point or the other.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, because to have a different voice, there's nothing wrong with different voices and different impacts, because all of those points of view that you and Michael may have, you bring in another individual, you sit there and go, okay, that's a point of view, and that's an angle that I hadn't thought of before. And you make a fantastic point about having a female influence when it comes to being a mentor as well. Literally, when you brought it up just now, I'm like, yeah, that makes a tremendous amount of sense going forward, that those kinds of voices are equally important. And it's something that in the process of thought, you're like, yeah, why didn't we think about that sooner? But the fact that you now have, I think, is just as important as having that realization.
Most definitely. Yeah. You want to continue to build in the most positive ways possible. And for Mike and I, we are extremely satisfied with where we are right now. Obviously, we want to continue to grow and want to continue to add additional assets to what we are doing. But I think it takes time. It takes time to come to an understanding of what is needed and what can help the continuous growth, and also the right personnel to go along with it.
Does it have to be an athlete, though? When you add other mentors as a part of Beyond Goals in the future, does it necessarily have to be an athlete? Can it be a captain of industry? Can it be a CEO? Or, does mentoring really have a jersey? Does it have an ID card?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because you can be anyone to mentor. I think there are so many mentors out there. You speak to, whether it be CEOs or CFOs or even everyone I met last night. All of these people had their mentors to kind of guide them through and make them, not make them, but shape them into who they are today.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important path and journey for all people who are successful. There is a lot of credit that needs to be given to those around them, to those who bred that leadership from the very get-go. So that's essentially what we're doing. I think our platform is unique. I think professional athlete platform is unique, because it was really interesting, because I heard a lot of people speak last night, and whether it be from AMB or whether it be from just stadiums in general. And they just kept saying, we are in the entertainment business. We are in the entertainment business. We are in the entertainment business. We're in the entertainment business. And I almost wanted to respond and say, we are the entertainers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We are the show, right? You guys are in the entertainment business, but we are the show. You go to Cirque du Soleil, you remember the name Cirque du Soleil, but you really give your respect, maybe not towards the people who are in the background, right? Setting everything up. You give your respect to the people who are performing. And I think that, in regard to even us as professional athletes, it allows us to have, I think, even a higher platform, and everything that you say must be said well. Everything that you say must be done well. And given the fact that you are that role model. And so I think the curtain is open, right? You open those curtains to really every action, decision, thought, emotion, the role that you play within, whether it be in your professional environment or even in a public environment, means that much more.
Because to your Cirque du Soleil example, we kind of gravitate toward the person that gets launched out of the cannon. Yeah, we know the one that's on the bicycle that's in the hamster wheel that's going 9,000 miles an hour. The gymnast that can sit there and take the hula hoops and do the complete and total split at 90 feet in the air. We kind of gravitate toward those folks. So I would ask you this as the entertainer is in this discussion. How long did it take you to become comfortable knowing your role as the entertainer, but knowing that you had to hold yourself to a higher standard and know that you have to be around those folks that share your ideas, share your goals, share your vision, so you're not hanging out with the wrong crowd, even as an entertainer and an influence on others? How long did it take you to become comfortable with who you are right now?
Man, that is, I think we are continuously learning. We are continuously growing. We are continuously maturing in different ways, whether it be through experiences that we have, sometimes decisions that we make. But I think from a very early age, I give a lot of credit not only to my parents, but just people around me. And I think I had great mentors in my life to help me understand the do's, the don'ts, the rights, the wrongs, the things that are most valuable in life, and things to be grateful for, things to keep you motivated, things to help you and continue to dream towards. I think there's a lot of different values in which I learned as a very young kid, but I think also just traveling the world and seeing life in different areas and learning about different cultures, and seeing that not everybody's life is exactly the same. Not everybody's life is cookie cut. I think sometimes us as Americans, we only are focused on what we have around us, and until you go to other places in the world, you start to realize that there are smaller of things that people are very grateful for, and it has nothing to do with being spoiled, because I know here in the States, there are families and places where people do struggle quite a bit. But I could go speak to any Title I school, high school or middle school, and I can ask every kid to raise their hand, and I always do. And I ask how many of them have a console, how many of them have a phone, and 99.99% of those kids will raise a hand. Whether they have a Nintendo Switch or whether they have a PlayStation or whether they have a phone or whether they have an Xbox, doesn't matter if they live, in a trailer park, they still have a console.
Yeah.
And so, I think when you go to different places, you see life a lot differently. And I think within my experiences, I think just seeing what other kids had, whether it be in South America or mostly South America, even playing in Mexico for a long time. It's the littlest of things, right? It's taking to an orphanage there, taking a stuffy, right, a stuffed animal.
Yeah.
That's a Thai stuffed animal that for you see at Hallmark or Walgreens, or my kid wants to grab one every time at Kroger or whatever. It's $1.50, $2. For them, that just made their whole year. Right. And they're going to carry that stuffed animal, and they're going to keep it with them and cherish it because it's probably the only toy that they've ever had. So I think I learned that from a very young age of just kind of building those values of obviously strive and motivate yourself towards more, but also be content with what's in front of you as well at all times, because there's always somebody else that's struggling much more than you. You can be assured of that.
Can you remember when you realized that for the first time, that, I'm really fortunate, there are others who are not as fortunate? and I should, share my experiences with them. When did you have that first interaction? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think when I moved to Brazil when I was 12, and I just remember going there, and I was an average American kid, and I just think watching these kids, whether they were coming down to training from the slums and just taking public buses at the age of 11 and 12 to get to training. I think that was the moment to where I started to realize the only thing that they had, their only escape, was soccer. And, I could go back home and whether I was successful there or not, as a kid, I could go back home and still go to a very decent school and do all these great things that my parents provide. And for them, these kids were already away from their parents, at that young age. And there was only one thing on their mind, and it was probably to get their parents or their family out of poverty. And that was the grind, and that was the hunger, and that was you could feel that tension within training, right? Everybody was out to, they're all great kids, but everybody at the same time was out to kill, because, these kids are 11, 12 years old, and they're already fighting, thinking about 7, 8 years from now. Whereas kids here in the States, we play soccer. I mean, I teach my kids to play soccer for fun, right? And it's something that's going to teach them so many values and teach them so many different things. But I think when you start to see in other places, these kids' mindset are completely different. And I think it gives you just a different perspective about life. And for me, it taught me that hunger. It gave me that hunger as well. I put myself in their shoes. But then again, I think it also made me take a step back and realize, I am very grateful for not only this opportunity, but just to learn from that. And I think, it kind of helped me shape myself the rest of my life to always give back, to always be a part of kids who are maybe in similar environments, and just always try to be involved in the community.
Greg Garza, Beyond Goals Mentoring, hanging out with us on the Friday Free Kick, as we do here at 9:30 on Friday mornings Eastern time. In your early relationships that you had with, fellow athletes going from 11, 12 to when you started being a professional athlete, how many of those teenage relationships do you still have today? How many of those folks are you still in touch with, or because of, things getting in the way, it's hard to reach them one way or the other? Do you still have those early relationships?
From kids in Brazil?
Or just early on, from like 11 to 12 to when you were really on the path to being a professional?
Yeah, of course. I still speak to some kids every once in a while. We're all still very connected within social media. I wouldn't say we have, long conversations, but just to kind of see where everybody is and see how they're doing in life is always great. There's one kid in particular that's probably a kid that I grew up with my whole entire youth. And we hit it off from the get-go. The very first Boston camp it was in Boston, it was a private school, the first under 14 national team camp. And I believe I wasn't even 13 yet. I think I was just about to turn 13. I was still 12. That was my very first camp. I actually let my 7-year-old son won his 5v5 tournament this last week on Labor Day. And I let him, he couldn't find his shin guards. And I have my shin guards from that camp that I used my whole entire career. All right. So I used those same shin guards my whole entire career. Those are championship shin guards right there. Never took them. And I remember I actually lost those shin guards. Paul Dillon, the equipment manager from Atlanta United, when I separated my shoulder against Red Bull and I got the red card, Paulie D lost those shin guards, man. And I was livid, man. That's my pride and joy. He ultimately found them and sent them back to me. But, it's, I had I let my 7-year-old use those shin guards in the 5v5. And that's the one thing I told her. I said, I don't care if you lose your body today, man, but you will not lose those shin guards, man. Do not take your shin guards off. You have a rest between games. You take your cleats off. You want to you leave those darn shin guards in, because they've lost like 8 pairs already. But that camp, going back to the story, that camp, there was a kid from Pennsylvania, and his name is Zarek Valentine. He plays for Minnesota now. Right back. He was on, and it's an interesting story. He was on Portland Timbers whenever we beat Portland Timbers in the final. He was on the right. He was playing right wing back. It was him and Aldo Polo were on my side. And that just goes to show like that's probably one of the coolest relationships that I've had within my career, that we met each other and we hit it off when we were at that age, at 12 years old. And we never fell off kind of the map. He kind of was in and out of the national team process. He got released at the under 17s, then kind of found his way back in the under 20s, under 23s. Never made it to the full team, but I mean, just somebody who was always in and out. His brother was a massive U.S. soccer prospect, Jules Valentine, who won national championship at Wake Forest back in the day. So it just and he won national championship with Akron with Caleb Porter. So just that's a particular guy right there that I think that we still keep in touch, and just somebody that I think we got to see each other grow up and have those certain values with each other. He's a great dad. He's a great husband. He's a great father. He's a great guy. And I think we got to see each other kind of have those values instilled. I owe a lot to U.S. soccer. Somebody asked me that last night, and what does U.S. soccer mean to you? And I said, man, U.S. soccer was my pathway. U.S. soccer was my pathway to success. I never missed an age group. I was from that very first Boston camp. I never missed an age group all the way up until the full team. So that was my pathway. That was my trajectory. There's very, very few of us that have done that. But they are the ones that gave me the opportunity to seek my dreams. So I love that U.S. soccer is going to be in our backyard in the next couple of years. And hopefully, I really do hope that I can have some sort of connection with everything that they have, because I am so grateful for everything that they did for me, not only as a kid to instill those values within me, but just to watch me grow up and ultimately use that pathway as my pathway to success.
So get hydrated here for a second. U.S. Soccer, if you are listening, and we know that you are, please consult Greg Garza and Michael Parkhurst when it comes to your future plans at the Arthur M. Blank Training Center going forward once you have been constructed. Okay, there we go. And the reason that I ask about relationships and past relationships is because we have our base of who we are as individuals, and it comes from those early relationships. That's the first building block that we have in figuring out who we are and who we talk to. And then as we go, you go to U.S. soccer, you become national team players, you become a player overseas. All of these different building blocks work on your foundation as to who you are as an individual. And that was why I wanted to ask about the early relationships, because that's those first bricks that get put into the foundation of who you are as a person. And that was why I wanted to ask that particular question, because that kind of forms an early relationship mentally about mentees and our ideas and where we're coming from and all those kinds of things. That's why I wanted to ask that.
For sure. There are so many implementations from what we use, and probably Parky as well, from U.S. soccer with our mentees, right? The personality and character. To me, I think about it as, it's one thing to see these kids and being at the Atlanta United Academy dinner the other night. It's one thing to see these kids represent their city, right? There's one thing, these kids are at the pinnacle of their city, yep. Right? And just for me to kind of, I couldn't have ever fathomed the idea of being their age at 12 years old, younger than them. I represented my country at every single age group. And I think that is something to just really understand the role model. And I think I knew of that at the time, but I think now that I'm retired, it really allows me to understand the character and the leadership qualities and everything that goes within to represent your country is much different than representing your city. And I remember whenever somebody would ask me what it means like to represent your national team. And for me, it was, even at a young age, I had always told them, I feel like, I said, I give the utmost respect, and there is nothing else that I would respect more than our military. Mm-hmm. Everybody who is in the military, whether it's Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, right? All these, but I felt, whenever representing your country, I think a lot of us felt that same passion, right? You are representing your flag. everywhere you go. And that's something that I think I take with a lot of pride. And I always kind of use that analogy of kind of, wherever these guys go, they always have their flag stitched on their arm, and so I think for us, it was very similar. And I think those are the values that I try to instill within a lot of young kids. And I mean, although I might be speaking from a different platform of representing my country, but with those kids, it's the same values that they need to do to represent the badge that they're also representing. And I think that's an important thing.
So then, since you opened this door, you've obviously been looking at my notes to talk to you this morning. U.S. soccer, they've got a couple of friendlies coming up this weekend, and the first one is against Canada. And, like I said, knowing our notes and knowing where the conversations go, sometimes I don't even know where the conversation's going to go. We open a door and we head to a certain place. You got a friendly coming up against Canada tomorrow in Kansas City. And before you came on, the questions have been asked of the Canadian national team about the whole drone bit and getting these kinds of alleged unfair advantages. And now you have a national team on the women's side that has been questioned, and you've seen consequences, and it's now been drifting over to the men's side, and you're wondering about consequences. Unfair advantage. This is what I wanted to ask about. When it comes to unfair advantages, have you ever been in a situation where anyone in your circle has been tempted to take an unfair advantage or take an extra advantage that really isn't ethically right? And when confronted with that kind of an ethical dilemma that you might have seen, how did you confront that kind of a situation?
Man, we could go on all day.
Okay. I'll write this down for next time.
Yeah.
Ethical dilemmas with Greg. Okay.
Yeah. As look, playing in Copa Libertadores, I think for me was like the definition of unethical behavior to win a soccer game.
Wow.
In every way possible, right? Whether it be poisoning food, whether it be I watched like Argentina and Chile last night.
Yeah.
It was a war. It wasn't even a freaking soccer game. It was the most boring. I turned it off to watch the U.S. Open after the first half. I didn't care what was going to happen. I think I saw like 75 fouls within the first half and like 11 yellow cards.
I was going to say, and how many were called? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I think back to Copa Libertadores for me, and it was just like, holy crap, man, this is a different world. South Americans, they will kill.
Yes.
for whatever they represent.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I have a lot of stories whenever I played for Tijuana and Copa Libertadores. So being in Brazil, man, so we can share those stories next time.
Nice. So ethical dilemmas do in fact okay, so I did write it down. Ethical dilemmas with Greg. So we got that.
I always tell kids, look, and even I tell my own kids, do whatever you can to win. Just don't cheat.
There you go.
Right? Okay. Do whatever you can to win. And that's one thing that I think I wish we would learn as Americans. We are too nice sometimes. We are innocent. I see kids all the time. If I were to play in Brazil, right, and whenever I was a kid, I was my son's age when I moved, and there was a ball going out of bounds, I wouldn't run to go get it. I would take my sweet old time to take that throw in. Or if I'm on the bench and that ball goes out and I'm warming up, I just kind of lift up my foot and let it go through. Yeah, let it go. It's the other team's ball or it's our ball. Oh, I didn't see it go by me.
Oh, man, what happened?
Yeah, right? You see pros do that all the time. They will do whatever they can to win. They won't cheat. It's not cheating, but they will take it to their limits. Yeah. Whereas kids, my son, the ball will go out of bounds and we're winning 2-1 and there's a minute left. And he'll run as quickly as he can and he'll throw the ball in. And I'm like, dude, just relax. Take your time. Take 60 seconds. Take 90 seconds off the clock. You guys don't play extra time in youth soccer, man. So, it's when that ref, he sees 30 minutes, he's going to blow the whistle. He don't care. And so I wish we had that. There's a saying we have in Portuguese and I love it. And it's be malicious without malice.
There you go.
And so it's that's a great saying to use. You got to be careful with how you say it,
True.
but be malicious without malice is a good saying, because you never want to be evil, but if you can do a little something to kind of I always tell kids as defenders, right? If there's a runner making a run in behind, just step right in front of him as he's making that run. Just block his trajectory, right? Is that a malicious thing to do? Yeah, it is, but you're not doing any evil. You're not wanting to hurt the guy. You're just blocking his trajectory so he can't run in behind you. Because if he does run in behind you and that ball goes over, well, guess what? It's your head, man, not his.
It's a 2-on-1.
Yeah, exactly. So there's little things like that I think have helped. And I think that even with mentees, sometimes if they're open to it, I usually do it with the older ones. I don't speak like that with kids who are usually under 15. If you're over 15, then we can have those conversations.
Yes. All right. So the fourth held up the board, and we are over. But as always, my friend, great to catch up with you. And so we will discuss ethical dilemmas, being too nice, and being malicious without malice next time. I wrote it down, my friend. Go get hydrated. Have a great
Sounds good. Take care, man.
All right. That's Greg.
Bye-bye.
That's Friday Free Kick with Greg Garza. And so I have that stuff written down. So for the next time, when Greg is with us, we have ethical dilemmas with Greg. Like literally, I have it written down. Ethical dilemmas with Greg Garza. The U.S. being too nice, or just being too nice in general, and being malicious without malice. All right, so that we've got with Greg and our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring. So, reminder. So I'm going to remind myself, you got stuff with Greg. So here. All right. So what I'm doing, I'm not throwing this piece of paper away, putting it where the other pieces of paper are. So Greg's notes for next time right there at BG Mentoring on the Twitters. And it is a full conversation with Greg and with Michael Parkhurst, and can't thank them enough when it comes to taking their time on a Friday morning to talk about mentoring and what they're doing at Beyond Goals and the importance of topics. And like I said, traditionally, I might have a topic or two in mind with Greg and with Parky when they come on. But most of the time, it's from their answers where I steer the conversation. Because if there's a talking point that opens a door, then I think that it's a door worth opening. And so then we go through that door. And if they say something else, we'll go through that door. We say something else, we go through that door. And so literally it's almost like a Q&A treasure hunt, because you find answers that you might not have necessarily even thought of when it comes to asking a question or going down a particular pathway. So like I said, most of the time it might be a question or two that I have locked in, but most of the time it is just learning from them as we go, and then kind of seeing where the road leads. But once again, at BG Mentoring on the Twitters, and also on the board, it is at MF Parkhurst, and Greg is on Instagram, but he is not on the 280 character app. So I think it's GM Garza on the Insta, the gram, or the IG, as the kids say, and then MF Parkhurst and BG Mentoring on the Twitters.